What's going on, YouTube? It's your very first episode of Magic Man Reviews. I took in some notes here. And for our first book, or first review that is, you can see this now, we'll put it up. This is the Oxford History of the French Revolution, second edition by William Doyle. Alright, it's a nice little book. Not a monster, not a brick, but it's a good sized little book. Big time history buff. Love reading about history. When you read history books and you know what's happened in the past, the things that happen in the future are not going to surprise you, okay? Because humans are going to human, okay? I mean, they say history doesn't always repeat, but it often rhymes. It's because human nature really doesn't change all that much. So we're always doing the same kind of basic stuff that we always do. I knew a lot about the French Revolution going into the book, but some of the things I didn't know, and it really helped to enlighten me about some of the things that I really didn't know. I was under the impression that the French had a constitutional monarchy the same way that Great Britain had with their king. No. They had a straight out feudal system, and they weren't very coherent in their taxation and their regulations and their laws. One region could have one set of regulations and taxes and levies, and you go to another region of France and it would be totally different. So it was kind of like a holdover because France had been adding territories to itself throughout the whole feudal the whole time that they were a feudal society. Okay, so a lot of people don't understand what was the really cause of the French Revolution. One, it wasn't so much as the monarchy itself. It was a lot of the stupid decisions that the monarchy made. They bankrupted themselves by getting into the 7 Years' War, and they also helped the American Revolution. So they got really, really, really high into debt, and they really couldn't pay it off. And they also had a very large population problem. It was overpopulated. These people were poor, rural people. They would move into the cities trying to find work, and there was just I think the book said it was like 1/3 of the population was just poor and illiterate, living, hand to mouth, day to day. And if something bad happened, a hailstorm, bad weather, a bad crop, then they were out of luck. They were starving to death. So you have a large population of people that are, teetering on the edge of poverty. They're not getting enough food. They're starving to death, and they're looking for somebody to blame. And the people they came to blame was, one, the monarchy, the bureaucracy behind the monarchy, the church. The Catholic Church had a lot of power within France at that time, and they blamed a lot of their problems, rightly so in some respects, on those different aspects of French society. Never on themselves, hey, listen, if I'm dirt poor, maybe I shouldn't get married, start having kids, but no, hey, that's humans, you can blame somebody else. Just looking through my notes, there was a lot of entrenched interest in France. The noble class, even if they were poor nobles, they still, put on nice clothes, rode around, and acted like, they were the bee's knees, and everybody should bow down to them and kiss the rings, even if their little chateau was falling apart, or they just lived in a tiny little house. They were still nobles, they were better than everybody else. Let me see. And the feudal system, if you don't know it, one of the things I read in this book, and it kind of sums up for me. I haven't heard it before, but it's the feudal system consists of three parts of society: those who work, those who fight, and those who pray. So you have the workers, the peasants, serfs, whatever, and you have the nobles, the ones who go out and lead the armies and fight the king, counts, marquis, stuff like that. And you have those who pray. the church, basically, the Catholic Church. And that's pretty much what a feudal system was based upon, at least in, in Europe. All right, let me see. Now, some of the things that were happening in France, and this wasn't just happening in France. They came out with the press where they were, I think it was the Gutenberg press, where they were able to manufacture books. And beforehand, they had to be done by hand. Scribes and writers and stuff, they would be able to write books, but they were very, very expensive. The press allowed people to print out books, newspapers, journals, articles, and more people were literate and they could read. And this is what really came about with the Enlightenment. More people were able to read, so you had more of a upper class of people who were more educated and able to read. And this is where a lot of stuff, where they started going against the church, because people could actually read the Bible and not just go on what the pastor or the church told them what the Bible said. They could actually read it and say, hey, this kind of doesn't make any sense. A lot of backlash on that part. Let me see what else. The American Revolution really influenced French society too. They started say, hey, well, if these guys can do it over there, they can overthrow their government, or at least not overthrow it, but secede from their government. That's basically what they did. They says, we're not taking over Great Britain. We're just separating ourselves and doing our own thing. And a lot of people in Europe and French society, because a lot of French soldiers had come over here and helped out the Americans during the American Revolution. And they, got some of the ideas of liberty in their heads, like, well, they can do it, why can't we? They haven't even been around for 100 years. We've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Why can't we do the same thing, Why can't we have rights and liberty and whatnot? Let me see. Now, once the French Revolution started going on, I don't want to give too much away on the book. If you don't really know a lot about it, I'm not going to try to. It's one of the things I don't want to do is give too much of it away. But if you already know a little bit about the French Revolution, you kind of start seeing that a lot of things that happened then are a lot of the same things that happen now. You have a lot of virtue signaling. A lot of the nobles and a lot of the clergy virtue signal themselves to all the way into the guillotine. Okay, they wanted to be seen as, oh, we're enlightened people, we're so great, and they didn't understand that the common people, hated their guts, and so they turned on them. After they had overthrown the king, or basically made the king kind of like a prisoner in France before they killed him. And they voted, hey, we want a constitution. And a lot of the nobles went along with it, thinking they're going to find a way to angle some power for themselves, at the same time kind of virtue signal. Okay? And it backfired on them a lot. A lot of people, especially during what's called the Terror, or the de-Christianization of France, a lot of people got killed. It was basically payback and blaming other people for their problems. And a lot of the clergy and the nobles had it coming, because they weren't always the best people. Let's just be straight. But chopping people's heads off, that's a little rash, Anyway, let's go on and see. And you'll see that these people are the same types of people you'll run into in society. They're the self-anointed, the intellectuals. They think they know it all, and they just wound up killing each other. The French Revolution, it turned on itself. In a lot of revolutions, you'll find eventually do this. So they turned on themselves. They started fighting each other. And for a while, it was what they would call a true democracy. Now, a democracy for many of you who don't know, is just another fancy word for mob rule. The mob says, we're hungry, we want bread. You're going to give us bread or you're going to get the guillotine over here, just like your buddies got yesterday. So you're going to do what we tell you to do. I don't care, what your fancy titles is. If you're a senator, you're a congressman, or you're, what do they call themselves? Consul. We don't care. We're hungry. We want some payback, and we all voted to take you to the guillotine. Majority rule. There goes your head. So that's a democracy. Okay. Let me see. What else do we have here? Okay. And a lot of these, you'll see this too. This is nothing new. A lot of these nobles, well, even the nobles, the people like the Jacobins, the Jacobin clubs, and they actually, if you read about the Jacobins and the French Revolution, they actually sound reasonable compared to some of the stuff that's going on today. That's just my opinion. I try to not make this channel videos too political, but we're talking about the French Revolution here, okay? I mean, it's kind of hard to deviate from politics. But not to really get into modern stuff because, you got to mind your pints and quarts YouTube algorithms, so you don't get banned. So, but they actually seem reasonable, but they were just crazy. They were crazy. They changed the calendar to start off with year 1, starting with the French Revolution. They were just threw the baby out the bathwater, just doing crazy stuff, and they were detached from reality, really. A lot of the things you're going to read in this book is how the literate class, the upper class, the middle class, the merchant class who had come into power and got some money for themselves, they really started it was idealism over pragmatism. Okay, they did not live in reality. Okay, they thought this is a great idea, we're going to do it, and it's going to be the results don't matter. It's the intention. Okay, this how these people thought, and it's the same thing these days, or 20 years ago, whenever. It's all about the intention. It's not about the results. Okay, there were pragmatic people there. Eventually, one pragmatic person came on, the man on the white horse, Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, and that was the end of the revolution. He made himself emperor. So the one thing that I want to the one thing that was hard for me about this book was the keeping up with the factions. So they didn't really have political parties. They had different factions that would congregate, and sometimes they would stab each other in the back, and they would go this way and that way. And it's strange to me because I always thought some of the concept of when we referred to as left and right referred to the French Revolution, where you have the leftists sitting on the left side and I think the royalists who sat on the right side. So, but it was much more complex than that. That's a simple way of seeing things, People like simple stuff, That's the one thing about this book that was hard to kind of keep up with. The rest of the book was pretty much an easy read. It really was. It was not hard to keep up with. But once you started getting to the factions and the royalists, the anti-revolutionaries, the revolutionaries, some of the more radical French terms that I can't pronounce, I'm sure you know, I can't pronounce that shit. Anyways, and what you'll get here too is another part about humans being human. This really, really, really rang a bell with me. Is projection. Okay, once the revolutionaries had really gotten a hold of France, they started saying, well, what's good for us is good for everybody. So we're going to invade Belgium, and kick out the Austrians, or the Habsburgs, whatever, and we're going to bring them liberty and fraternity, just like we've got. Uh, and they basically went in there. It's more so northern Italy, when they invaded northern Italy. And it's like, well, we're going to bring liberty and equality to northern Italy while we steal all their money. And our army lives off the land, stealing their cattle, their livestock, stationing people, quartering people, their soldiers at people's homes. And they're like, we don't understand why these Italians and these Belgians, they don't understand. We brought them liberty. And we brought them freedom. How come they hate us? And I'm thinking to myself, where does that sound familiar? Maybe, I don't know, Iraq? Maybe I'm going for, whatever. Yeah, that's projection. It's just, humans are getting human, really. And when you read this book, you're going to think to yourself, wow, they were doing the same stupid stuff back then that we're doing now. And people are just oblivious to, like, how come they don't love us? How come they don't appreciate the liberty? Duh, they're broke. You bombed their country. They would have been better off if you just let the dictator in there, Anyway, now the French Revolution, it wound up hurting the poor people more than anybody, and they were supposed to be about enabling the poor people to get rights, so they wouldn't be just god-awful serfs. That just got spat upon or abused by the nobles and the church, whatever. And it wound up hurting more people than it ever helped. Okay? So, the book says about a 1 million. I'm not sure if this is total within just France itself, or France, its colonies, Belgium, the Rhineland in northern Italy, Corsica, whatever. Where if it's the whole where the revolution affected, or was just within France itself. But 1 million people died, okay? And under Napoleon Bonaparte, which came, another 1 million died. So that's 2 million people. And granted, they didn't have the population that we have today. They had a smaller, lower population. We're talking a huge segments of society, not just in Western Europe, but all the places where France and Great Britain and all the Europeans had colonies, because they all fought each other all over the world. Okay, I mean, if you can actually think of a lot of the European wars, especially like the Napoleonic Wars and the American Revolution, as being world wars, because they affected the whole entire planet, because they were fighting each other over resources, and their allies and subjects, or vassals, were fighting other vassals and subjects and allies of those same European powers. So it was just people killing each other. Kind of sad when you think about it, but if you, like I said when I started this video, if you understand history, and you don't get really worked up if you read a newspaper or listen to the news, watch the news, listen to the radio, and you hear stuff like, oh, well, they're doing this and that, and they're blowing this up. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. It's humans doing human stuff. Okay. Don't want to give too much of it away. At the end of the revolution, I'm going to kind of not get into this, but they got burnt out from the revolution, and they wanted stability. So, fast forward, you get Napoleon Bonaparte. And I really didn't understand how Napoleon came into power. But when you read the book, you do. You'll understand how they threw off a king and the nobility, had a revolution, and got an emperor. It's like, wow, how did that happen? But you'll understand. It's a good book. It's a good read. I recommend it to you. Some of the things you're gonna... One of the stranger things that I encountered in this book was Marxist terminology. Okay, he uses the term William Doyle. I didn't do any. I didn't look up the author. Been busy. Got to work. Can't always read and do stuff. But but this is actually um, nothing new for because most academics are they have the left leaning mindset. So they uses the term bourgeoisie in the book. Okay, and that term was, I mean, it comes from a French term from bourgeois. Okay, but the term bourgeoisie and proletariat, really, from my mind, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, came about with Karl Marx. Karl Marx invented those terms. Him and Engels invented those terms, and they weren't really prevalent till their time. Excuse me. And the French Revolution happened before they were born. They actually looked to the French Revolution for inspiration. Okay, so it's kind of like rewriting history a little bit, but I could be wrong here. I'm not the brightest. Anyways, but it's a good book. It really is. It's very informative. If you have a basic knowledge of the French Revolution, then you really go into the details and understand it in depth. Now, if you have no idea what happened in the French Revolution, pick up this book. It's a good book. Um, it's you can get it done if you read a chapter a day. You can get it done in about a week or two. Good book. And the thing is, I want to stress about anytime you're reading, well, not anytime, but a lot of time when you're reading books like this, history books, you're going to realize that there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing's going to surprise you. You're like, oh my God, they said the same stupid stuff back then that they're saying today. They just changed it up a little bit. It's like, nah, humans are going to human, man. Human nature doesn't change that much. So if you're aware of it, your blood pressure is going to come down. It's going to relax. It's like, let them do what they're going to do. Just get out the way. All right. All right. Until next time, y'all take it easy.